Fact is that the sales consumption stays the same. The number of laying hens increased, fewer egg imports, and it triggered also battery farm bans in other countries. Yes, thank you. A bit about the way how it came to this presentation today. About 25 years ago, maybe, there was a very strong debate in the movement about abolitionism versus reformism, which suffered from clear definitions what is what, but it led to quite strong conflicts, and especially that reform campaigns were seen as actually participating in politics of the opposition of animal industries. One of the most outspoken person was Gary Francione. I met him in early 1990s in England. He was then not so strongly against reforms, but eventually, around 2000 and a bit, he developed this idea of new welfarism, where he said any betterment of the treatment of animals by law is a step backwards, and that animal industry actually gains from this. They actually make more profit if animals like battery hens are not kept in cages. What I found surprising then was that animal industry is vehemently opposing any animal welfare. So if it was for their better, then it's kind of strange that they don't understand that. Gary Francione went as far as in 2008 writing publicly that the Association Against Animal Factories, VGT, is the worst, also the biggest obstacle to achieving animal rights. So he considered essentially my work to be and ours to be the biggest obstacle to achieving animal rights. So what I want to do is now present you with the results of the reform campaigns of the last 25 years, just stating facts. As the basis for a debate on was this now useful or not, was this an obstacle to achieving animal liberation or was it not? To begin with, I want to show you this curve. It is a curve that is only qualitatively, so not quantitatively, developed over the decades of activism. And I want to briefly explain to you what it says, because also I'm obviously not in the picture online. Okay, I want to briefly explain to you this curve because it, to me, explains very well why reform campaigns are essential, actually. This curve, no. This curve shows from the left to the right the development of society from being completely ignorant about animal abuse, saying any animal abuse is legitimate and okay, socially as well as legally, to complete rights of animals and a complete respect towards animals on all levels. And that this is a continuum might be surprising to some, because philosophically it is a big distinction between subjective rights and some welfare laws. But I claim, but I won't argue for it in detail now, but I claim emotionally, psychologically, and in that case especially socially and politically, there is a continuum from the complete abuse of animals, step by step, to the complete respect towards animals. And what this curve now shows is, you can imagine it to be the surface of a table, and we humans are little bowls on this surface. And the curve is such, I call it a system in society, that if we are here, up here, on a complete usage of animals, like organizing dog fights, there was recently a dog fight ring uncovered in Austria, so there are people who are breeding dogs to pit them against each other. And they know that this is socially unacceptable, they know that this is illegal, they know that animal activists are on their heels in order to uncover what they're doing, and so they are constantly under stress of keeping it secret that they are using animals, and that the police don't see them. They always have to look over their shoulder if they're already coming, if there are secret cameras somewhere, so they are under permanent stress. And this stress pressures them towards more animal-friendly behavior. So leaving this pastime of pitting dogs against each other out. And that is shown here qualitatively by this decrease here of this curve. So if you're a bull up here doing animal fights, you're pushed towards this minimum here. And this minimum here is the place in society where there is no pressure, no social pressure on you. You're behaving as everybody else is behaving. And in our society, that means you're using factory farm products, you're taking these products out of the shelves in the head height, and you don't care at all. You just buy what is cheapest, what is easiest, and you eat the sausages on the sausage stands that are available, and you just do as everybody else does. This is the situation where you don't need any energy to do this kind of behavior. If you then move towards more respect towards animals, like you see an investigation and you decide, I don't want to eat factory farmed pork anymore, I want to only eat free-range pork, then you're moving upwards again, because it is quite difficult to find free-range pork. It is an exertion. It needs some motivation. You need to find out where there are restaurants that do that, where there are signs that you can identify such products. And if you move then towards vegetarianism or veganism, the change is not much bigger, though there's not much more energy spent, but actually the society constantly pulls on you back towards factory farmed products and behave like everybody else. You can imagine that like you're swimming against the stream, you're a pioneer kind of active person, pioneer kind of life, and most people are just not capable of doing this. Most people haven't got the motivation to do this, even if they feel that it is wrong to eat animals or factory farmed products, they still do it because the motivation is missing, simply. Or they do it a while, and then they have some problems in life so that the motivation shifts. Maybe they lose their job so that they have other things to think about, and then they take the easiest product and do as everybody else does. And this, I find, is the problem that I found with this investigative work or vegan outreach, that you constantly take the bowls out of here and push them up here by showing publicly what animal suffering these products involve, and then the bowls roll back down again, like Sisyphus work. You push them up again and they roll down again, you push them up again and they roll down again. I have a number of such examples of people who actually said, yes, I want to not eat animals anymore, and then suddenly they're back down there. And actually, if we now lift the moral finger and say, but they are all idiots, why do they do this? I don't need to do this. I am happy staying vegan, and I find it very easy. Then I question if you drive a car, because basically all of you will admit that driving a car and with fossil fuel is damaging the climate. So you probably feel like I shouldn't drive a car, but you still do. And there's some among us who say, no, I won't anymore. I have the strong motivation that I take electric cars or trains or cycle, or I actually don't travel anymore. And this is the tiny pioneer minority that is swimming upstream. But most of us are here, where everybody else behaves when it comes to using fossil fuels. So the problem is that the system is doing this, and a system forces people to act against their will. And it is important to do awareness work so that people think differently, but it is not enough. What we need to do is change the system. And what reforms do is they take this minimum down here and shift it to more respect towards animals, to more protection towards animals. One example that I will then point out more strongly is, for example, when it comes to using animals in a circus, like at the beginning of our campaign in the 1990s, there were many wild animal circuses where elephants were standing upright and tigers and lions jumping through fire loops. And then we got a ban on wild animals in circuses. And what that meant is that there's this this minimum here, shifted to the right. Everybody went with it. You didn't have to convince every person separately. They just fall in line. There is no animal, wild animal, so nobody goes there. If you want to go there, then you have to travel abroad to some other country like Germany, and there you need energy and motivation to do that. You need to travel hundreds of kilometers in order to see wild animals being subdued. So this is an example of shifting the system, and this is what these reforms essentially try. It was not until the late 1990s that we felt as a movement in Austria strong enough to actually take this idea of a system change in our hands and actually force with public pressure a new law. And the first was a ban on fur farming. It came in 1998 for 6 of 9 provinces. 3 provinces had only welfare reform, where he said that mink needs swimming water and foxes need natural soil. But it eventually changed in 2005 when all fur farming was banned in principle. So you know the trouble of fur farming, and this is what it looks like today. This is the fur farm, the third but one, and this is how it looks today. If you walk inside, this is how it used to look, and this is how it looks now. It's just a place where you put some rubbish or some machinery, but there are no animals used inside. This was the last fur farm. This was the biggest in Austria that then moves to Czechia. It had 9,000 mink. And this is the same place 10, 20 years later. The same place where this picture was taken. There's now a forest. There is a little cabin left. This is where they poisoned these animals. You still find inside the catchers for the mink. But the forest has taken back the place where this fur farm was. And the fur farm ban caught on internationally. This is a picture that is some years back. But you see all the countries in green have a fur farm ban. Some countries in yellow have an end of fur farming. And some other countries, these are the blue ones, getting fur farm bans in just at the time this slide was made. So in summary, firstly, the reform step in 1998 did not mean that there was not another reform step possible, namely the complete ban. An abolitionist might argue, I met very different kind of abolitionists. Some say, like Gary Francioni, any law that doesn't say all animals have rights is reform. Some say a fur farm ban is abolitionist because it abolishes fur farming, but then you could say, what about leather? So why making this distinction? And isn't it so that if you abolish fur, then you promote leather? So this argument still remains, but fact is that the fur farms were abandoned. The effect was that the last fur farmer moved to Czechia, the others didn't. The others just stopped running fur farms. The fur sales were unchanged, but this argument that we have banned it was continuously used to make fur look as an illegal product, or a product that society has generally says generally is socially unacceptable. So the fur is immoral was definitely an argument that we could use from this ban. And it led to a number of fur farm bans elsewhere, and as you know, the ECI has possibly will lead to a EU-wide fur farm ban. These are the facts to the fur farms. The second campaign then, starting in 1996, I think, was against wild animal circuses. The ban was voted on in 2002, and it came into effect in 2005. I remember the debates in Britain where they said a wild animal ban is just reform. Abolitionism would be all animals banned. But then others say, why ban them from circuses and not from zoos? So again, the debate, what is the definition of abolitionism, is raging. But the fact is that the ban said that these things cannot happen in Austria anymore. Elephants are beings that you cannot present in this ridiculing way. Nowadays, here Circus Roncalli, for example, shows holograms of those animals. Again, this ban triggered a number of other bans in other countries following suit. I think today there are 40 countries having banned. Some have complete ban on all animals. This is the dark green one in that case, but in other continents there are also countries of that. And some have a ban on specific, on wild animals, but the orange ones are those that, at least when this slide was made by Peter, had no bans of any kind of animals in the circus. So in summary, we have the abolition of a usage of certain animals, so-called wild animals, in a certain way, however humane. Again, abolitionist criticism, what about domestic animals in that case? And what we definitely have is increase in respect towards wild animals. Elephants, tigers, lions, bears, like having them with a nose ring dance. Many circuses had that in Austria. There were 16 circuses with wild animals. They just couldn't do that anymore. And the opinion of the humans in society is those animals are beings that you shouldn't treat like that. And also it didn't stop further reform steps, because this year in 2025, a reform was voted in Parliament that also banned camels and buffaloes, which are considered domestic animals, in circuses. So there was actually a further ban that came in, say, 19 years later. So it doesn't prevent further reform steps. It also triggered, as I said, bans in other countries, and definitely it stops people in Austria going to such circuses. Never mind what their opinion is. It's just too, you need a lot of motivation, you need a lot of input energy to actually do this, and nobody really does that. So the behavior of the people in that case was completely changed, and they don't go there anymore. The next ban was the battery farm ban, an intensive campaign to ban all cages, not just conventional, but also enriched ones. It took effect in 2005, although it was voted in for the 1st of January 2005. It took effect for conventional cages 2009 and for the enriched cages in 2020. Up there you see the conventional cage. Down here is an empty battery farm nowadays, or 15 years later. And this is barn egg production, and this is a free-range farm which is well run comparably. You see that again, still these animals are in a factory farm, but they have more space, they have nests, and they can scratch on the floor and they can sit high up. But in any case, they have more space. So this is the cage, and this is barn eggs, and this is free-range eggs as it is according to the law in Austria. And this is a good run free-range farm. You see that this barn is in a hedgerow so that the animals actually go out, and they have also this dust bath. Now let's look at the consequences of this. I'm sorry to say that it's in German, but this is the statistics. They are in German. And here you see that the year, and here the euro price per 100 eggs. And you see that in 2009, this ban took effect, and immediately the price was rising. So almost we have nowadays twice as high a price per egg than it used to be before the ban. So the price was actually increased per egg. And this is the sales from 2014, 2018. And the red is free range. Then we have free range, so free range organic, free range conventional, and this is barn egg. And you see that the percentage decreases. So people buy more and more free range eggs. So actually it seems that the respect towards hens has having a long-lasting effect. It increases that they actually stop buying barn eggs more and more. So it is not that people concluded if the cage is wrong, everything else is cool, so we can eat barn eggs. but it actually does decrease. This is the number of eggs, and this is the value in price, because organic and free range is obviously more expensive. So, the attitude towards hens increases. But what did not change was the consumption of eggs. So you see here, per head and year, 236 eggs in Austria. Then the ban came and it decreased slightly, but it's still wobbling up and down. Here even we have more eggs per head, but not many. But in a sense, it stays the same. So seemingly this price increase by a factor of 2 didn't decrease the number of eggs being consumed per person, wherever that is. What actually did decrease, though, is the import of cage eggs. So people were being aware that, caged eggs are bad. They're actually banned in Austria, so people stopped buying them, imported cage eggs, and the imports dropped. So this is production in Austria versus consumption, 75% when the ban took effect, and then it went up to 90%. It is now 92% even is Austrian produced, the eggs. So the import of caged eggs decreased from 25% to less than 10% in the last 10 years. This is the number of hens, and what you see is the number of hens is increasing. And this is obviously because the imports drop, so there's more production in Austria. So the number of hens are increasing. This is the sum. This is caged, which disappeared. The enriched cage disappeared eventually. This is the years from 2009 to 2019. This is barn egg, free-range egg, and organic. And everywhere the number of hens is actually increasing. So what can we conclude from these facts, or summarize them? Conclusions. Yeah, we can draw in the discussion. Tomorrow at 3 in room B, I would love to discuss these data and see if people think this or that reform success was none, or it was a success, and if so, why or why not? What the cage ban did was improve hen protection. As a person who was in prison for 3.5 months, I can say that any slight improvement of the way I was kept is something that you appreciate. Any slight improvement, really. So subjectively, for those hens, the cage ban is definitely an improvement. Abolitionist criticism is that the barns' egg production is still egg production, and the number of hens are even more. So there is animal abuse as before, maybe, and there is still a factory farm for egg production. The price, the egg price, went up for a factor of 2, which says that people are willing to pay twice as much for the same amount of eggs. We did expect that the egg consumption would decrease because of the price, but seemingly eggs are some product where it needs to increase even more before people start exchanging it to something else. Fact is that the sales consumption stays the same. The number of laying hens increased, fewer egg imports, and it triggered also battery farm bans in other countries. For the enriched cages, I think Austria was the first country that did do this ban. Is there a reform possible? Is there a ban on barn egg production possible? We did do a number of occupations of barn egg farms already. We did criticize it in public. We showed pictures of it in public. There was no improvement yet. We didn't run a reform campaign on it, but it seems to me that this criticism was not shaken off and said, are you mad? First you ban cages and now you want to ban the next. It was something that was worth debating. And you see that people reduce barn egg consumption. So it seems that people appreciate it if you criticize barn eggs as well. So it might well be that one day barn egg production can be banned as well. Another example, what have we got the time? Yeah, okay. A ban on experiments on apes. We ran this campaign in 2006 and won it, so there came a ban, and not just great apes, but all apes, including gibbons. These are pictures that were taken inside a lab in Austria, where 46 such chimpanzees were used for experiments since 1976. These chimpanzees, here you see the lab again from inside, these 3 pictures, and they were then rehabilitated, which shows that the public perception of those animals has increased so much that you couldn't just euthanize them, which is what the company wanted to do. But you said you have to invest a lot of money to keep them because they are animals who have a right, not a subjective right, but they should be able to live, and you shouldn't kill them simply. And so this is indoors and this is outdoors. Considering that these animals were in a cellar for decades, some of them, and for the first time in their life they could go outside, it was a very moving moment to being there, and it felt like with the empty battery farm, with the fur farm, and sitting in a circus on Cali where there is suddenly holograms, it felt good. It felt like a success. It felt like worth doing. It prevents burnout. We have a number of international bans. Austria was not the first country to do it, but we are still the only one with gibbons. Reform. Abolitionist criticism, you could say, what about other primates? In Austria, they stopped using primates altogether, but not by law, just a decision of private companies and universities. They could start any time. What is impressive is that it is a ban on experiments with those animals, never mind how important the issue and never mind how little the harm. So it is a ban in principle, you know. You cannot experiment on chimps, never mind how important that would be. It led to a rehabilitation of 46 lab chimps and a number of so-called monkeys. We also followed it up with a personhood trial for Hirsel, one of the chimps, and that made also a big public debate on if those creatures deserve having rights. Are they persons or are they not persons? So it raised the issue, it raised the awareness of people, of these beings, it raised the image of chimpanzees as being important beings, and it raised the respect towards them. It did, maybe not our ban, but there is a consecutive increase of number of countries that ban such experiments. EU didn't get really in their 2010, I think, guideline, or yeah, they didn't ban it, sadly. In 2007, we achieved a ban on caging so-called meat rabbits, so rabbits for meat production only, so not rabbits as pets. And this ban was decided on in 2007 and took effect in 2012. Here you see how they looked, the same farm, or essentially the same, how it looked afterwards. So they had to have open, so they can't be stacked on top of each other. It must be no wire mesh on top, and there must be enough space in 2 levels for the rabbits. Interestingly, no country followed up with this. So far, Austria is still the only country with such a cage ban. It definitely improved the welfare of those rabbits. Definitely 8 rabbits in these little cages, and now they can run around. Abolitionist criticism, the pet rabbits are excluded and open boxes still allowed. The large rabbit factories did change, while small farms actually didn't realize there's this ban, and many of them still keep rabbits in cages. Only in the year 2020, we filed 45 cases against people keeping rabbits in cages. No bans internationally, and the cage age, ECI included this ban, though. Let's see where it goes, probably nowhere. Rabbit meat consumption didn't change, it's very low, and it's all imported essentially now, with a few people keeping it themselves and these very few bigger rabbit production factories. Interestingly, or badly enough, there are companies that produce rabbits for vivisection, and they keep them still in the same cages because the rabbit cage ban doesn't apply to vivisection rabbits. Releasing of bred birds for shooting. We had long-lasting campaign, one has to say, actually in a number of steps. In 2017 to 2022, we then enforced the campaign, so ran it very strongly. This is the breeding of pheasants. This is the way they release them. Austria had about 700,000 released pheasants per year. At the end of our campaign, they are 100,000 still. And a number of 5 of 9 provinces produced an outright ban of releasing pheasants, ducks, partridges, or any birds for shooting any animal. This is the pheasantry in Austria before the ban. This is afterwards, before the ban afterwards. So here also nature has taken back these areas. Here you see a ban in 2017 in this province 22. There are still some provinces that allow it, but they have to register, and it's sort of a bit reduced. But as I said, from 700,000 to 100,000 it was reduced, and I do think that it might be possible to extend this campaign to eventually get rid of this practice altogether. Abolitionist criticism, shooting at wild birds, unchanged. We had 3 reform steps actually. In the 1990s, a law came in that said you can't release the bird and shoot them straight away. You have to have weeks between shooting and release. Then a second reform step in 2005 that they have to be kept beforehand in conditions of 18 square meters per couple of pheasants, and the pheasant keeping must be at least 2.5 meters high. And then came the bans in 2017 to 2022, which says in that case the reform was not putting the abuse in stone, but it was possible to do another reform after that. Hopefully the next ones as well. I have a number of further campaigns, but not the time to talk about them. But in summary, I find with these campaigns that never mind what it does to the animals eventually, the image of animal use is definitely damaged, very much so damaged. And you hear that from all over the place, from the industry who does that, from the hunters, from everywhere. The image is suffering badly due to these campaigns. There's a lot of public attention to the topic. This topic becomes the primary topic of animal usage in Austria. The media report on it because they report on the conflict between humans and not about the animal usage. That would be only short once or twice. They say this is how the animals suffer, then we have told the story. But the story continues for months and months and months because there is this conflict between human groups, which is interesting to them. Politically, and it's for me the most important aspect of these reforms, the status of animals improve. So animals aren't beings that you can do what you like with them. Chickens are beings that you cannot put in a cage, full stop. Rabbits the same. Elephants are beings that you cannot use for entertainment and amusing yourself. Further reforms do not prevent, reforms are not prevented. That's a fact because we have a number of cases of that kind. However, when it comes to the consumption or usage, in some places it is gone or reduced, like wild animal circuses, ape vivisection, birds released for shooting. In some places it had not changed, like in eggs, consumption of fur wearing, or the consumption of rabbit meat. Thank you. If there are questions, please do. We have maybe 5 minutes. And
yes, so we have some 5 minutes left. Thank you so much, Martin. See a question over there already.
Thanks for the terrific talk. Do you have data on egg consumption for other European countries during that time? Could there be a possibility that the effect of the higher egg prices was actually confounded by a wider trend and was still having an effect?
You mean the level of consumption or the increase in price? The increase in price was so sharply at the time when the ban took effect that it must be connected. But I did not look at international consumption. So no, I have the Austrian statistics and I wanted to know what's happening. Because the interesting thing is the Austrian eggs increased in price, but the imports still decreased, where there would be much cheaper eggs. So people were willing, really offensively willing to pay more for the same amount of eggs.
Thank you.
Is there another question, maybe from our online audiences? Let me just check. No. Okay. Is there another question here in the room? Okay.
I had a very similar question. Like, I think it would be better to compare with different countries, because even if you say the X consumption stayed the same, like maybe, I don't know, it would have increased otherwise, but the reform kept it down. Maybe it would be some other stuff, because there's so many confounding factors. And yeah, comparing with different countries would be very valuable, I guess. So yeah, but you already said that you didn't look into it, so yeah.
Okay.
So I think we have one more. Okay, yes.
Yeah, so I guess the challenge also is, once you have a ban, it requires maintenance, because as we see now, you know, the wolf had a protected status, but now because of this, you know, mass political move to the right, you know, they're trying very hard. I think the seal import ban is also being debated again in the European Parliament. So I guess once we achieve the ban, it also requires maintenance. Do you have any insights on that, or any thoughts?
A very important point. I actually forgot to mention that the point is that if you run a campaign, in some cases for years, where this topic was upmost and was a political topic and was in and out of the programs of the governments and the political parties, and eventually it is decided on with a majority, even unanimously in Parliament, and the essential opinion in society is that is really bad, and we are really happy that it's gone. And my experience that is, after a campaign, if you get the reform step, then it's fixed. They can't remove that anymore. If something, if something is decided upon only without such a campaign, like some government is suddenly ethically minded and introduces some welfare law, then it is very easily undone again. We've seen that also in a number of cases. But if it's after a strong campaign where you actually reach society and there's media coverage and there's political parties who eventually, when it's decided on, they stand in Parliament and say, we always wanted this ban. You should have seen the debate when the enriched cage ban came in. The government actually had promoted the enriched cages, and then they stood there and said, we always wanted to ban rich cages, and now we do it because the people want it. And unanimously, every single MP voted for the ban, and they can't undo this. Something like that they can't undo anymore.
So thank you so much for your presentation. You already mentioned that in your presentation. We have a workshop regarding this topic tomorrow at 3 p.m. in room B. So if you want to discuss more about it, feel free to come over room B. And with that, I want to end this presentation. Thank you so much, Martin.